Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Films and Stuff. I'm Ethan, joined by the irrepressible Pete. Hey, Pete, what's up?
Not much, buddy. How are you?
Everything is good. Since it's streamer skip, listeners know the rules, but why don't you recap them in 15 seconds or less?
Oh, here we go.
Used to be 30.
Yeah, I know. Eventually, we're not even going to give me any time. All right, but the rules are as follows. Ethan has given me a list of TV shows to watch. I have given him the same. We randomly assign each other a show each week. We watch at least 2 episodes of that show. And based on those 2 episodes, we decide if that show is worthy of being streamed or skipped.
Hence the name Streamer Skip of this segment.
Indeed.
Okay. Pete, without further ado, what were you assigned to watch this week?
So this week, I was on Netflix to watch a show called The Outer Banks.
Oh.
OBX. So you told me that it was this beach resort town in North Carolina.
I did.
And that's exactly where the show is based. Have you ever watched The OC or Gilmore Girls?
Neither, but I am aware of their concepts.
Right. So likewise, I have never watched either of those shows either. This is probably the third in that same genre, as it were, in the sense that it's a young adult / teen. In fact, it's not even young adults. It's teens. I mean, I call them young adults because they're mostly played by young adults. But this is basically about a group of 4 misfits who live in Outer Banks, North Carolina. They're all high school students. And of course, as you'd expect, they all come from a very disparate background. You've got the young, fit, super handsome idiot who's a little bit like a roguish thief. You've got the young, very attractive, smart black guy who's like the brains of the outfit.
So you got the dumb jock, you've got the minority nerd.
You've got the rich, pretty girl.
The rich, pretty one.
Who's slumming it, right? Because she's the rich girl. There's obviously a class divide, but she's slumming it with these chumps.
Presents her father. Yep.
Exactly. And then you've got the 4th guy who's effectively the leader of the group, who's also a very young, handsome guy.
The charismatic leader.
The charismatic guy who, no matter what he says or does and whatever idiocy he does, he's able to kind of get the gang on his side to do whatever nonsensical hijinks that he wants to do. And of course, this is a show about 4 teenagers, but they're all drinking beers. They're all, they've got their own boats. They're living the life that you only see on TV.
No homework. No homework.
The father of the leader of the boys is missing and has been missing at sea for like a year, but somehow CPS hasn't come in and taken him away, even though he's a minor. That kind of thing. It's a very...
Is this Dawson's Creek of this generation?
That's exactly right. It's exactly like it's this generation's version of that, which means that unlike Dawson's Creek, which was a little bit more homely, it was a little bit more humble, it was a little bit more about the message. This one's a little harder, it's a little edgier. The kids are all into having sex, they're all robbing people, they're all doing like things that, and maybe I'm the one who's out of touch, but things that we as teenagers would never dream of doing. Like we might have taken our dad's car out for a joyride, but we certainly weren't.
When you use the word we, I think you mean you.
Okay. The royal we.
I was collecting Legos, my friend. I don't know.
Exactly. When I say we, I mean, in our generation.
Some
but that's
people we
probably
knew.
as far as we would go. I don't know if we would go much further as the average teenager. But, these kids are skiving from work. They're obviously not going to school. They're drinking beers. They're doing all this kind of stuff that only exists in Hollywood. This is, I think,
Right.
not really indicative of the real world.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's the
Anyway.
overall setting. The premise of the show is that we find out in the first episode that there's a massive hurricane that's going to hit this town. And in the aftermath, obviously some people are missing. And we find out that the kids, they take this opportunity to kind of go scavenging because,
Okay.
there's a lot of destruction and stuff like that. So they take their boat out there and they discover a shipwreck. And they go down into the boat wreck. They find a key of some motel nearby. They take the key and then they discover that the boat belonged to this guy in town who's well known for being like this do nothing guy who's always struggling for cash.
The vagabond.
The vagabond that everyone kind of knows about, right? Like he's the hobo that everyone knows about. They go into this motel room, and inside the motel room, they discover a safe. They open it, and inside the safe, they find a ton of cash, a pistol, and like a mysterious envelope filled with some papers. And so obviously, this hobo has gotten himself into something. He's become a smuggler. How else could he have afforded that boat? That sort of thing. And then naturally what happens is as you would expect, another group of gangsters are also looking for this guy. And they also turn up at this guy's hotel room and they start chasing after the kids. And, it just becomes like...
So the mystery begins, right?
The mystery begins. That's exactly right. As you would expect, and this came to absolutely no surprise to me, when they opened up the safe, there was like a package. They opened up the package, and inside that package is a compass. And guess who that compass belonged to? Dun, dun, dun. The leader's
his father.
Exactly.
Oh, of course.
Easiest of cheesy teen adventure things.
Like a compass?
Yeah.
It'd be like a watch or like one of these,
But we both know that the compass is obviously going to have something inside it.
Of course.
Or it's going to be
an inscription.
Rigged,
yeah.
And it's going to be, there's some kind of like inscription or rigging to it so that it leads them to some kind of buried treasure, which, by the way, we're also given, the MacGuffin. They mentioned that there was a British ship that sank off this coast in colonial era, and it had like $400 million worth of gold on it. And obviously, that's going to be the thing that these guys are going to be chasing after.
Right.
This is precisely what it is. It's a cheesy teen drama / teen adventure with a mystery, that kind of thing. Total nonsense for you. But that's because we're older now. We're more experienced. We can see these tropes coming a mile away. There's nothing in this show that's unique or new. So this is 100% a skip. I also think if you're one of our teenage listeners, this is probably right up your alley because it's got the right blend of edgy with sexy and, cool factor, all that kind of teenage angst and drama, all that nonsense. Look, if you're looking for the OC, if you're looking for Dawson's Creek, if you're looking for Gilmore Girls, but you want a 2023 version, this is it.
What usually makes or breaks these shows is a character or a relationship between the characters. Does this show have any of those things where you're like, I really like Dawson, or Dawson and whatever, Tom Cruise's ex-wife really have to get together?
So as you would expect, because of the four, one of them is the pretty young girl. I'm almost certain that two of the boys are going to fight with each other for her affections.
Okay.
Like it's inevitable that's going to happen. Right. Okay. Or one of them is going to confess their attraction for her and it'll become a will they, won't they situation, but without the charm of what we saw in the early 90s, it's again, nothing that you and I could not predict.
Right.
So I saw 2 episodes, just enough for me to realize exactly what's going to happen or where the show is going. And that was more than enough for me.
All right. So that is Outer Banks, and it's a
Yeah,
Netflix original, right?
it is a Netflix original. I believe there are 3 seasons already out,
Whoa,
and a
whoa, whoa.
fourth season has been greenlit, and in fact should be released towards the end of this year or something like that.
Yeah.
It's either going to be released at the end of this year or it's going to be released because they finished filming. This
Yeah.
is again also perfect for Netflix. It's not an expensive show
Mhm.
because there are no superstars. And with all due
Yep.
respect, I'm sure these kids are very good. They're
Mhm.
all very young. They're all
Mhm.
very attractive. But that also means they're very affordable. You don't have a superstar in them.
Right.
Having said that, could one of these or all four of these become superstars in the future? I'm sure. But it's kind of like one of those things where you kind of got to cut your teeth, just like what Katie Holmes did with Gilmore Girls.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same.
I think what you said is like for Netflix, it makes sense that they have a couple of these. The cast is relatively small, not expensive, a lot of working actors or young actors. And it's probably filmed in a place that doesn't have a super high production cost. It's a bunch of, it sounds like dingy beach towny stuff, right?
This is very similar in high level concept of what Netflix is looking for, like when you
Yeah.
saw Virgin River.
Yeah. Oh,
Formulaic, predictable,
oh
but
my gosh.
just different enough to be successful at that specific genre.
Yeah.
So, whereas Virgin River was maybe a little bit more Hallmark channel genre, this is much more teen drama.
In fact, I would be interested if you could have like a sexometer and watch these two side by side, because I imagine that the people in Outer Banks are having dramatically more sex than the people in Virgin River, which has lived up to its name. Uh,
Yeah, and of course, I've only seen two
yeah.
episodes. The other thing about Netflix is they're not as edgy as, for example, HBO is. So
Oh
this is
yeah.
not like
Oh
Euphoria
yeah.
where they're dramatically
What was a show we watched about investment bankers in London?
industry.
Which actually should have been sex industry rather
Yeah,
than investment banking. I
investment
mean,
banking, exactly. You're absolutely right. So
yeah,
that's what I mean. Like this is in Netflix's wheelhouse, which is to say,
right.
look, we're going to push the envelope in terms of edgy, dramatic roles,
Yeah,
but we're not going to
right.
push it in terms of
No one's
sexuality.
going to take their top off.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Like it's enough that you see a lot of these youngsters in like bikinis or
Yeah.
in speedos or like, shorts and topless with abs. That's
Yeah.
enough. And a lot of the sexuality is probably going to be implied. I
Yeah.
certainly don't expect to see any nudity in this kind of a show.
Mhm. That's a Netflix MO.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Outer Banks on Netflix. 100% skip. You heard it from Pete. Listen and obey.
Exactly.
Now, I don't want to say in contrast, but I was assigned a show with a very long title called The Last Thing He Told Me. It is on Apple TV Plus. It is starring Jennifer Gardner,
Mm-hmm.
who is much more like the Jennifer Gardner we've seen in The Adam Project, remember? Where she's kind of like
Like the older mom.
mom mode
Yeah.
and no longer in alias mode. And a Lannister always pays his debts, Nikolaj Coster-Waldau.
Yeah.
Am I pronouncing all that correct? Who is playing this dude named Owen, who's a computer programmer.
Okay.
And he is living a very happy, chilled out life in the Pacific Northwest. He's a very nice guy, single father to a total bitch daughter. And he is in a relationship with Jennifer Gardner, who is a woodworker. I
Okay.
haven't seen that one in a while. That's a new trope. So they are in a very happy relationship. The daughter's name is Bailey. I deplore her, but do you remember Spider Man Homecoming, where everyone was in London? She played Betty, Ned's girlfriend. Do you remember that?
I do. Betty Brant.
She was Betty Brant in Spider-Man Homecoming, and she was quite likable there. So she's not an unlikable person. She's Australian, by the way. She plays Bailey, so there's something about the B names, an absolute spoiled ass brat, not just as a person awful, but as a character, her awfulness creates a stench over every scene. Like to the point where I can recognize that an adolescent only raised by her father would be a little bit unhappy, let's say, if her father were to start dating someone else, feeling this is a replacement of her mother, she's sharing her father's attention, all kind of the usual things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can absolutely recognize that there's going to be some level of drama unhappiness. I cannot recognize that such a young adult would just be 100% intentionally mean, miserable, condescending, rude, ugly in every single scene, in response to every single comment, every single question, every single scenario. It was unnecessary, over the top, and frankly, it diminished what could have been actually a pretty good story. That's my rant on how little I liked that character. I think it had a negative impact on the show, that they could have toned it down. It was like at 11. They could have toned it down to like a 7 and said, hey, be unhappy with your dad's relationship, but you don't have to be a complete brat constantly, you know?
Right.
Here is the story. Jaime Lannister, let's call him Jaime Lannister, right, is in this happy little relationship. One day, he just disappears. He's gone. Turns out that the company he works for has been raided for some type of tax, accounting fraud, blah, blah, blah. He is like their head programmer, and he is just gone. So the immediate implication is, oh, he must have been involved in this, and he's on the run. Jennifer Gardner, of course, who's only started dating this guy, knows him much better than that. He would never leave. He would never leave his daughter. He must be innocent. I know his heart, blah, 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 blah. And somehow he delivers a sticky note, literally a sticky note. Doesn't write a longer message, just says, take care of her. That's it, what he puts on the sticky note, which under the circumstances, even if you are skipping town, seems like if you take the time to write a note, you could do just a little bit more, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I love you. This is for the best. I'm putting you in a tough situation. Please take care of my daughter. A little bit more than just take care of her. 4 words on a sticky note. And I think it was in pencil. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, Jennifer Gardner, of course, takes this to mean, without really any evidence and without really any good instincts, that he's totally innocent. He must be on the run for some other reason, unconnected to the FBI raid in the company that he's accused of defrauding. He must have a very good reason for this. Obviously, in her best interest, in the daughter's best interest, it's up to Jennifer Garner and a daughter who wants nothing more than to kill Jennifer Gardner to unravel the mystery of where Jaime Lannister has gone and why he has gone. To be fair, not a terrible premise. I think it's a little bit clumsy in terms of the introduction. Not a terrible premise. Spoiler alert, I watched more than 2 episodes. I actually watched the whole season.
Oh, okay.
I'll give my rating now, and then I'll justify it. It is a strong mooch. Like I said, I watched the whole thing. I think if you watch the whole thing, when you get done with it, you'd be like, that was worth my time. I would not have paid for it, but I don't feel as though like I missed out on anything else by watching it. I'm happy I saw it through to completion, but it's not the most amazing show I've ever seen. It's really, by our definition of mooch, it's a mooch, right?
Yeah.
The mystery is actually not bad. It had some legs to it. So without saying more, I think the mystery is kind of like worth the time. And then you really don't see Jaime Lannister again, except for like a few kind of flashbacks. And that's about it. So if you really enjoy Jennifer Garner and a bitchy, not even a stepdaughter, just her boyfriend's or fiance's daughter trying to unravel a mystery and snapping at each other for whatever, 8 to 10 episodes, you'll like the show. I think Jennifer Garner gives a pretty good performance. She legitimately seems to try to unravel the story. She has a good kind of like second sense as a detective. Some of it's a little bit like fabricated where she just remembers things suddenly and uses like this intuitive deduction to like come up with things that honestly are just kind of random and out of nowhere. But to be honest, she's not bad. I think the daughter could be a very good actress. I loved her as Betty. She's miserable in this role. And to be honest, just watching her complain and gripe and bitch throughout every episode is a little bit exhausting, but there's a pretty good payoff at the end. So I would say the last thing he told me, despite the long title, is a solid mooch on Apple TV Plus. If you watch the entire season, I don't think you will regret it. But at the same time, if you don't watch the show, you will absolutely not be missing anything. It does not at all seem like there's going to be a second season. It's a one and done. And, you know, everyone made a little bit of money and they've got another piece of content, but it's certainly not going to be nominated, I think, for any awards or be something that Jennifer Garner's like, that's the crown jewel in my Lifetime Achievement Award.
I will probably watch this, but I'm already with you. I can't stand this trope of children or actors who are children or, you know, portraying children who are like these obnoxious, bratty kids. And I think that probably says more about the way I was raised, because like I would never do the things or say the things that some of these actors say. And, you know, some of these roles require them to say. And now that we're older, like when I see that, I was just like, I want to wring their necks and be like, grow up, you know, like this is not how you behave.
I mean, I've read some online comments, and the majority of comments agreed with my assessment which is not a life-altering show. The mystery is kind of okay, but it's really insufferable to have to watch, you know, this kid, just like the director told her, like, just be super, super angry, be super rebellious, be very, very belligerent all the time. She either took those instructions and played it up, or that's just her interpretation, but she really turned that level of disdain towards Jennifer Gardner really to an 11, to the point that I'm really surprised, kind of like in a testing or screening, someone's like, hey, hold on, tone it down a little bit. Like, we get the point. You don't have to like shove it down our throats. We get it. The mom and the daughter are not best friends. There is genuine strain between them. But, you know, after an episode or two, let's just kind of like turn it down a little bit. They can cooperate and like tolerate each other for the purpose of finding the man that they both love, right?
Right.
If I were Jennifer Gardner, I'd be like, look, fuck you. Like, I'm just not gonna like do this with you. I'll either find your dad by myself, but like, this is just not worth it. Like, you know, anyway.
Yeah.
That's my take on it, but I agree with you on that trope. It doesn't do a show any favors, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, strong mooch. So this week is over. We look forward to our next assignment. What have we assigned each other for next week?
So I'm staying on Netflix to watch a movie, I think, Synchronic.
Oh, fun.
I don't know anything about this. I know you very recently put this on the list and it just rolled up for me. No idea what it is, but it sounds sci-fi-y, something to do maybe with time, given the name, but I have no idea.
Right.
And you will be watching on Max. And caveat, I did not check if it's actually still available on Max or not. So you'll find out and let me know. It's a show called The Righteous Gemstones.
Oh, I've heard so much about this.
I am I really hope you can watch this. I am dying to hear your thoughts because I've been desperate to watch it as well.
It's John Goodman and Bumper, right?
John Goodman, Adam Devine, and Danny McBride.
So I can't wait to watch The Righteous Gemstones. I've never seen it. I have heard about it. And to be honest, my impression is that it's like quite good and popular, right?
Yeah, it's supposed to be like a satirical take on like these evangelical churches. So
Yeah.
like it's supposed to be quite funny, and because it's HBO, it'll probably go a little hard. I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping that this does to the evangelical churches what Silicon Valley did to San Francisco and the IT industry.
When you think about all the sectors that are ripe for a show like this, absolutely. It's a little bit surprising there hasn't been something prior to this, right?
Yeah, I can kind of get that only because there's probably a lot more controversy attached to these kinds of things.
Okie dokie. Can't wait to watch The Righteous Gemstones.
Yep.
That's streamer skip for this week.
As a quick follow up for
Public
everyone
service.
else, Secret Invasion has ended.
Oh, yeah.
Hijack has one more episode to go. I'm
That's
very
right.
much looking forward to it. I have started and finished on your recommendation, Platonic.
Should we talk about that just for a few minutes?
Sure.
Platonic with Rose Byrne, Seth Rogen on Apple TV Plus. I think those two have fantastic chemistry together, huh?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like really good chemistry, good on Apple TV for look, the premise of the show is very simple. It's
Yeah.
about two friends, a man and a woman, who were
Mhm.
very, very close. And then for natural reasons, they ended
Yeah.
up like splitting up as friends.
Like in university and a little bit after university,
Exactly.
they seem to be like not romantic, but like
The
platonically
bestest of
inseparable.
best friends. Exactly.
Right. And then Rose Byrne went and got married and had a career and a family. Zeth kind of was married for a while, did his own thing, and now they've reconnected.
And then they reconnect after many years apart. It's basically a show about them finding each other again as
Right.
close friends as they once
Right.
were.
Right.
So look, it's a very adult show. And by that, I don't mean adult as in like it's pornographic or anything like that.
Not
It's adult
HBO
in the
adult.
sense
Yeah.
that the themes are not geared to youngsters. And I do even mean young adults. Like if you're in your
Yeah.
early 20s, you're not going to be able to relate to any of this. If you're even in your 30s, you may not relate to any of this.
Yeah.
But once you start getting past your mid to late 30s, early 40s,
Mhm.
a lot of the themes in these relationships, in this relationship in particular, becomes all the more valid and all the more realistic and reasonable to you. So like it hits you harder. Kudos to Apple. They really went hard with this. And it's, they like some of the truths that are mentioned in here hit close
Yeah.
to home. And I imagine
Yeah.
they'll hit close to
Yeah.
home for a lot of people, especially
Yeah.
if you had a friend who was very close to you,
Yeah.
who was a member of the opposite sex.
Can I give an example of one of those things? So Rose Byrne plays, I mean, she's a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
But she previously was a lawyer.
Yeah.
She had a law degree. She worked in a law firm. Her husband has a law degree, just made partner in a law firm. And then she goes back to work. And there's an episode where they show the challenges that she has
Oh man.
being older than, like, she comes in as kind of like a junior lawyer. The difficulty she has, kind of connecting to them, the difficulty she has kind of like getting back into like a work routine. And when I describe it like that, it's a very dramatic sounding episode. What I think the brilliance of that show is that it hits that, what you talked about, a serious subject matter. The entire episode is funny though.
Hilarious.
But it doesn't lose the truth of that's got to be a tough situation for a mother of two to get back into the workforce and be like overmatched in terms of energy, knowledge, workplace culture, all those other things. It is really hard, I would expect, to take a serious subject matter and get a serious point across while at the same time being, objectively funny and humorous.
Yeah.
And I think the whole show is like that, where it hits really complicated issues, but it always tackles them in a very, very great comedic way. And that's why I love this show. I think it's fantastic. I think there's also a very good cast of supporting actors.
Fantastic.
In there, right? Like, so Seth Rogen owns a bar. There's 3 other co-owners. So Omar's like the intern.
Yeah.
Then there's kind of like the Asian investor. And then there's like the big dude, right? All those guys are very funny in their own way.
Yeah. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's also, I mean, there's a lot of things that are painfully true and hilarious about working with your friends who are also your partners. Like there's a lot of conflicts that come up there as well.
Yeah.
And as people, both of us have worked with friends who have also become our partners, we also understand like the logistical challenges in working with people.
Such as Pete and myself as co-owners of the Films and Stuff podcast.
That's correct. That's exactly right. So yeah, it's highly relatable if you're older. That's not to say you won't get the enjoyment out of it if you're younger. I just think it's going to hit you a little different.
All right. So that is a bonus feature on this episode of Streamer Skip. It is Platonic on Apple TV Plus.
But in the meantime, if you guys have any other recommendations for us, our Streamer Skip list is starting to get a little sparse. Reach out to us. You can tweet at us at FNS Podcast. You can DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast. You can email us aloha@filmsandstuffpodcast.com. Or, as always, you can like this video and leave a comment below. And then, of course, subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you know every time a new episode of Films and Stuff drops for you.
Pete, thank you for your time and insight, listeners. Thank you for your attention and dedication. We will catch you on the next episode of the Films and Stuff podcast.
Thanks, Ethan.
Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.